I'm going to stay at this 3/4 turn because even though I've worked real hard to prevent it from happening, there's a chance that one day my mama could find this stream, and I can't have her see me look her in the eyes when I say this. Reading comments the other day, and it just in an unrelated video. And somebody who was a men's rights activist brought up a point which I have to admit I agree with. People were making fun of, I think, Trump. But hey, it could have been Bannon. It could have been any of these cats for having small genitals. Now, I just want to be clear. It's not funny just because Trump likely, according to Stormy Daniels, has small genitals. It's funny because he's made a big deal out of not having small genitals. And no presidential candidate before this, to my knowledge, has it's even occurred to them to mention these things because they are utterly irrelevant. But still, men's rights activists said, look, I don't see how you can be angry at people that don't like black people because of the color of their skin, something they were born with, and then turn around and make fun of somebody else for something they were born with. And my heart broke because suddenly so many jokes I used to tell no longer funny. They were just hurtful. They were mean. So there's one more night where we're going to keep them alive and we're going to say goodbye to them. Because I will not make small or large D jokes. Now that said, I will still make I'm being real with you. You can't say I lied to you. I'm still gonna make large balls jokes. Because it's a metaphorical large balls. For example, let's say Justin Pearson, one of the gentlemen who went up against the Tennessee legislature, knowing damn well that they were racist, knowing damn well that they didn't care about kids, and embarrassed them on a national stage. And he managed to do this despite, having to lug around that wheelbarrow, which he requires to cart his gigantic balls around from room to room. That's the kind of joke we're talking about here, folks, except it's going to be related to the penis. Because Donald Trump has made a very big deal about whether or not his genitals are big. So for some context about why this is going to be such a topic of conversation that, shockingly, nobody else has jumped on, I guess because they came into adulthood being as mature as adults, and I'm just now getting there. But nobody else has talked about. Let's give it some context. Here's MSNBC, coincidentally, recently, talking about sort of the periphery of why this conversation is going to come up in an actual court of law. It's Salty Saturday. No solutions, just salt. Here we go.
MAGA Republicans coming to criminal defendant Donald Trump's defense. Surprise! Trump ally gym class hero Jordan subpoenaing Mark Pomerantz, a former prosecutor in Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg's office. DA Bragg firing back with a scathing response, slamming Republicans for interfering in an ongoing New York criminal case, engaging in a, quote, campaign of harassment and intimidation, calling it an abuse of power, and vowing none of this will deter his office from the Trump criminal case. Now star witness Stormy Daniels is speaking out, the woman at the center of the case saying she would testify against Donald Trump.
It's daunting, but I look forward to it. You know what I mean? Because I have nothing to hide. I'm the only one that has been telling the truth. I think having them call me in and put me on the stand legitimizes my story and who I am.
So there's no doubt if they ask you to testify, you will testify?
Oh, absolutely.
You see, if prosecutors are to be believed, and I'm going to stay at this 3/4 turn because even though I've worked real hard to prevent it from happening, there's a chance that one day my mama could find this stream, and I can't have her see me look her in the eyes when I say this. there's a chance that clown up on screen there, no, the white one, no, the other white one, the blonde one, that clown is going to be in court saying that that Stormy Daniels has never seen his penis. Now, on the campaign trail, he got self-conscious about his small hands. It was funny that he was denying that he had small hands, because he was the one that first publicly, of like the serious crew of the non-comedians, he was the first person to also make that related to his genitals. He said, and I'm quoting,
"He referred to my hands. If they're small, something else must be small. I guarantee you there's no problem. I guarantee it."
All right, man. Nobody in the serious crew was talking about that, but he felt it was necessary to bring it up. Okay. Go down the line some. And he appears, if the prosecutor is proved correct in a court of law, then he had sex with Stormy Daniels. He says, or at least he has said publicly, that he never had sex with Stormy Daniels. She's never seen him naked. Stormy Daniels has publicly described the former president's penis. That it was quite small. And now we come to the delightful part. This will have to be hashed out in a court of law. We're going to have to figure out who's telling the truth. Again, not because it's illegal for this guy to have a small schwanz. That's fine. But because it's now wrapped up in an actual crime. And he has contested, he felt the need to go that extra step and say she's never even seen him naked. Or at the very least, she's never even, they've never had sex. This will require, and I'm being serious, and correct me, God help me if I'm wrong, but as far as I sees it, this is going to require what can only be described as a non-biased penis expert. Now, one could argue that Stormy Daniels, because, all right, here's why. She says she saw what Donald Trump's genitals look like. He says, nuh-uh, we've never had sex. She said, oh, yes, we did. You paid me to cover it up. It wasn't, as you say, this was a consensual affair that we had. So she will be able to prove that she has knowledge of what Donald Trump looks like naked, but the court can't just take her word for it, right? The court is going to have to verify in some way, and she is going to be able to prove this by, bear in mind, this all depends on if they make this part of the case. It's silly. But conflict is that Donald Trump says Stephanie Clifford never saw him naked, and Miss Clifford said she has. To prove that she is telling the truth, Miss Clifford could describe Trump's genitals, and if Donald Trump refuted that description, the court would be obligated to verify which was correct. For the record, I think the Trump team will be confident enough, just barely, to argue that any description either party gave would be an opinion, thus allowing Donald Trump to describe his penis however he wants. Well, any similarities could be coincidence. The judge will likely accept that and move on, rather than be the guy to make a former president show his todger. But the fact that the prosecution might argue that a sufficiently detailed description would prove familiarity. Here's a segment called Jake Has It Both Ways. That's not totally crazy. I have a concerning mole in my bathing suit area. If somebody wanted to prove to a court that they had seen me in the buff, they could use a description of it to demonstrate that fact. They could say, there he is, Judge. There's the guy that said he'd Venmo me for dinner, didn't cover his half, then only paid the rest after I ghosted him. And I'm like, dude, thanks for the mind-blowing sex, akin to the Harlem Globetrotters in both style and tone, but we're in our 30s. Come on. The wild thing is, I'm not positive the judge would side with the defense. I'd say it's more likely than not, but one could reasonably argue that it's no different than having seen a tattoo that's normally covered up. If they decide to accept the description as accurate, they cannot simply have Miss Clifford describe the Schwartz of the former president of the United States in open court and then have him whip it out for the jury. You would have to bring in an independent expert who would view Donald Trump's genitals, then accept a description of them from Miss Clifford in front of a judge, Trump, and their attorneys, and then go on to the stand and testify as to whether Miss Clifford was able to accurately describe the genitals. Here's the thing. They either need an expert or a panel, because you have to trust that the person will understand what large or small means in regards to the general population. At the very least, they should be qualified to take measurements. This means we could be in a position where the U.S. government is combing through resumes of urologists, plastic surgeons, and moils who specialize in conversions, looking for someone everybody agrees can make an honest assessment of a penis. There could be a moment this very year where the whole country is watching this one random person pulled from the masses because Uncle Sam happened to need their particular expertise, clear their throat and say, yes, it's a little schmeckle. It's not about whatever physical trait the guy was born with. It's funny because he made it weirdly clear that it's important to him that people think he has a large penis because he believes having a large penis is important. More Jake has it both ways. For the record, there is nothing morally wrong with having a body of whatever shape, and the rest comes down to preference. Yes, preferences skew towards certain things more often, but that is only a fraction of what makes someone a competent sinner. And there are those whose preferences are for the diminutive. Not that I'd known. But I am hoping to hear from a charitable woman someday. What differentiates a stumble from a tumble is the ability to avoid falling. By lying about legal matters, Donald Trump has tripped, and the speed at which he realizes this ain't a stumble will determine how much dignity he has left when he hits the ground. That is what's particularly funny about Donald Trump's current legal situation. And for the record, I am positive that this will be avoided. I'm willing to bet that this will be avoided. I'm just saying, at a minimum, it's put Donald Trump in a place where his lawyers, in all seriousness, are going to have to sit him down and say, at some point, if you keep lying about your schwanz, the prosecution will make it an issue, and maybe you should just not talk about that particular aspect of this very, very shady-ass case. Oh, it feels good to say. It feels good to say.